It's interesting, like when you're in your rock bottom, it's really hard to talk to successful people that are happy. It's so hard. And so everybody that was on my podcast had hit rock bottom, but they all got out of it and they were in a very good place in their life. So every day I'm still in my rock bottom. I can barely pay my rent and people don't know that. This was very public too, but they don't know how bad it was.
This is A Joyful Rebellion, the podcast that explores that moment you realize the life and success you worked so hard to create didn't come with all the fulfillment you thought it would. I'm your host, James Walters, and I want you to be the author of your own story. Each week, I connect with people who inspire bold answers to the question, what do I do now to create a life I love? If you're ready to start answering that question for yourself, you're in the right place. So let's start a joyful rebellion. Have you ever hit a point in your life you would consider your rock bottom? My guest today had her own rock bottom experience going from a life of being on TV shows you've probably watched to having it all go away and trying to figure out how to pick up the pieces, reestablish her identity, and get the bills paid. In the years since her life-changing struggle, Tanya Memme has interviewed over 100 people who have hit rock bottom in their lives only to emerge stronger for it. She's writing a book about what those people and their stories have in common and what we can learn about resilience and the human spirit. I hope you get a lot of perspective from this episode, so we're going to jump right in. Tanya Memme, thank you so much for joining us on this Joyful Rebellion. I'm excited to talk to you. We got together through a mutual friend, Maggie. Definitely glad that she put us together. And you are working on your own book. And I want to dive into what made you want to work on that particular subject matter. But I know just in the little bit of research I've done, you've lived a big life. If I went through all of the places that you've worked, the people you've interviewed, all those things, it would take up all of our time. You've been in the media for quite a while. You train people to be more comfortable in the media or at least in front of the camera. So I would love to sort of get the highlight reel of what you have been doing for the past couple of decades in front of the camera. And that will kind of lead people into a better sense of what led you to writing the book that you're currently working on.
I guess it all started out when I was Miss Canada years and years ago, which sort of started my journey. It's funny. I was engaged to my high school teacher, if you can imagine. So there's a little secret nugget about me that you probably didn't know.
That's a whole different episode.
That's a whole other episode.
I see another episode coming up.
And I realized he was not the one for me. And I literally just left my hometown because after I had ended that relationship, about 6 months later, I won Miss Canada. Then I left and I just wanted to start a new life, basically. So I was on the road speaking and I was doing a lot of public speaking and, practicing my platform. And I went to the Miss World pageant in Sun City, South Africa and competed for Miss World. And that was an amazing experience. And then I moved to New York City because I got into the American Musical and Dramatic Academy. I wanted to be a soap star. That's really how this all started. I wanted to be an actress. Believe it or not, I came very close. About 5 different times throughout my career, I came very close to the lead role in a soap opera. But I was always number 2. I never got chosen. So number 2 was like a recurring theme for some of my bigger auditions in my career. But in saying that, I still had an amazing career. And I ended up on a show called Sell This House. Took me all over the country for about 15 years.
Okay.
It was a good run. And it's a run that doesn't happen very often
in
this business, I also hosted shows like Robotica with Ahmet Zappa. And Sell This House ended up becoming another show called Sell This House Extreme. And then there was another show called Smart Home Nation that I was executive producer of. So these whole, through the years, my career ended up really growing into something pretty cool. I was nominated for an Emmy, won a few awards. It was the life that everybody that comes to Hollywood wants, and so I had experienced that for quite a while. How it all started is I very much adore my ex-husband. He's an amazing person. We're just better off as friends. And so when you get into a marriage that doesn't feel right and you have a child with that person, it can really affect your self-confidence and you question a lot of things in your life. And that was also around the same time that Sell This House, the original Sell This House, sort of was coming to an end. I mean, that was like 15 years later. I
Right.
got married. So my show was coming to an end. I ended up on another show on Hallmark Channel called Home and Family. And I was on that show for 4 years. And I would come home to sort of a marriage that wasn't really right for me. And then I would go to work, and it was an environment that I just didn't think was right for me. It was a very, in my opinion, a very toxic environment. And I was really struggling, and I didn't have the tools to handle it properly. And I crumbled, and fell into massive depression. And, here I am on TV, everything's perfect and everything's great, on the persona. But inside, I was definitely falling apart. And it was just very difficult, and wasn't making that much money on the show. And things were just sort of like, everything was kind of going the opposite direction. And when those things happen, your life changes. When you start to feel, you lose your own self-identity and your confidence and things like that. I just couldn't survive in a toxic environment anymore. And my self-esteem had really just gone through a beating, let's say, publicly too. So I had to make a decision, and I decided that if I were to be yelled and screamed at one more time on the show, that I would quit. And so that day I knew it was going to happen, and it did. And I walked out. I left, quit.
Self-fulfilling
Yeah,
prophecy.
prophecy, possibly. But I mean, it's like that was happening a lot during those times, right? And I'm just not the person I can't handle that. Some people can. I just can't. And so I was crumbling every time those episodes would happen on set, sometimes in front of everybody for no reason. Do you know, there was just, I had my little nugget of integrity inside, and I'm like, I owe this to myself because I know I'm better than this, and I know that I deserve better. And so I quit the show. I left my marriage all within 8 months, and I didn't have a plan B. So everything I learned, I would not probably tell people to do it like that.
Yeah. You know what's funny though is that theme comes up a lot though when someone does get to a point, and I know you're going to talk about it more because you've talked to a lot of people about that point where you just realize, you know what, there's more to life, there's more to me, I'm better than this, and then you make that decision, and sometimes you do burn down a lot of different things at once. So what was the reaction in that span where people coming to you and say, hey, are you okay? Like, one thing we get, but all of these things, what's going on with Tanya?
I didn't really have a lot of that because I was still somewhat on TV until I'd quit the show. But I was on TV where everybody sees you as this, everything's perfect and great, and your life is awesome, and you're posting social media, and you have the best life, and everything's great. So I don't think anybody really suspected it until I had quit, and then until I had gone into a cave for about 5 years. It was a very long time.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to get out of it. Another thing I learned on my journey, and another thing I learned from my podcast, Life Masters, which is, we're going to talk about that, how that all happened, and then the book, is that you never ever want to make business decisions when you're in your rock bottom.
Okay.
Just don't. Never make business decisions. Yes. You're in your rock bottom. Of course I did. And I surrounded myself with the wrong relationships, and I invested in people that were not exactly the right people to partner with and invest with. And so I ended up losing pretty much everything that I had saved, because a lot of my TV shows, people think I made tons and tons. I did very well. Yes, I was doing very well. But all the shows that I'm on, they're all non-union shows. Sell This House was an amazing show. It's non-union. So it's not like I've been collecting residuals all these years.
Right.
And I'm just being open about it. I talk about my life very openly. So I can relate to what it's like to have a lot of money and really struggle. So I ended up losing pretty much everything. I was a single mom at the time. I ended up moving into this teeny tiny apartment, bottom floor, super dark, loud. It was just everything you don't want in an apartment is where I had to live, because it's all I could afford. And that was 1 year I was in that apartment. But I hid from the world for about 5 years. I was pretty much off of social media. And my social media was all over the place. It's interesting, who does ask, are you okay? What's going on? Things seem a little off. It's funny. I had fans of mine clue in more than most of my family.
Wow. Okay. That sort of makes sense. But at the same time, how did your family react when you went through this series of massive changes all in less than a year, and you were feeling like no one was really reaching out and saying, hey, you're all right, let's check in? But how did they react? Did you get more judgment? Did you get more questions? Did you get more, are you sure? Questioning your ability to direct your own life?
Yeah, I got a lot of judgment. That's my own story in my head. But they didn't ask me what I was going through. They didn't really, I mean, they knew I was, but no, they were not really asking me or questioning or trying to help me figure this out. Then I was falling pretty deep.
You felt like you had to figure this out on your own.
Yeah, my mom did, of course. I'm very close to my mother. So she was there for me, but she's probably the only family member that was there for me. That was it. And I don't know what it is. You learn a lot about a lot when you go through some hard times, right? Do I wish that they would have reached out and at least called more often and sort of said, hey, how are you? What can I do to help? Yes, I would have loved it. But, families are very complicated.
Oh, preaching to the choir.
Yes. It's just very complicated. And I do think that they have said, and I'm sure that they thought that I had just made a series of very bad decisions that led me to this point. I just was very victim mode, very angry, very depressed. I was very attached to my identity within this business. When that all comes crumbling down, you really don't know who you are anymore. So I didn't go to any parties anymore. I didn't really want to socialize because I'm like, well, I don't want to go to a party. So I say, so what do you do? And well, nothing.
Right.
I used to do this.
Yeah.
So anyways, through a series of events, I realized that I have a very solid group of amazing friends. They were all there for me. They knew I cried many times on their couches and their coffee tables and just fell on the floor. I have a close-knit group that they were there 100% for me and they're like family to me. What happened is one of my friends called me up and she says, I need to help you. She said, I want you to come over to my house. She goes, I have a shaman coming and there's going to be an ayahuasca ceremony.
Okay.
And I was like, what is that? I didn't know what it was. I didn't know anything about it. She goes, just don't research it. Just come.
No questions.
Yeah. And so that's literally, I went into it not knowing anything. I was like, sure. When you're at your rock bottom and you're truly at your rock bottom, you're willing to do anything to get out. And if you're stubborn and you're not willing to have a curious mind or at least try different things, then you're not at your rock bottom. You're just not there yet.
Yeah.
You're going to let yourself get beaten down just a little bit more, until you're willing to do what you need to do to get out.
See how far this thing goes. Yeah.
I did this ayahuasca ceremony, which I'm sure you've heard about if you've been listening to my podcast and stuff, but it was the craziest and wildest and most difficult and awful and best and amazing experience I had in 12 hours. It was anything that you don't want to happen on ayahuasca totally happened to me, and anything that you do want to happen on it happened to me. I mean, it was wild and it was brutal and difficult. It took me a couple of weeks physically to just get grounded again. I was just out of it for a long time. So while I was in the journey, so much happened. That's a whole other thing, but so much happened that night. And if you've ever done plant medicine, there's a spirit involved in this medicine. Might sound weird. I don't know if it's the plants. I don't know if it's just me hallucinating. I don't know. All I can tell you what happened. I was told by spirit, and it was a female energy, and it said, use your God-given gifts. And my God-given gifts, I said, my thing I love most is interviewing. So start a podcast and call it Life Masters, and then you're going to write a book about it, and then you're going to start public speaking about it. And the answers to getting out of your rock bottom will be right there.
Wow.
It was that clear.
Okay.
I know. So I was like, well, yeah, but I need money to start this. So what do I do for that? Okay,
Yeah.
I got to build myself out of debt now. Right? No, it was just that's all it gave me. And it gave me tons of information about my family and this and that and all these things. It was really awesome. It was very
That
interesting.
would be pretty great. I would like to make that phone call for myself.
Right? And I have actually a pretty good relationship with my family. They're good. I think some people just don't know how to relate to somebody when they're in there.
Sure.
They don't know what to do. They don't know how to handle it. That's what that was.
Yeah.
So I started the podcast. There's a studio here in LA called Studio Place LA, and it's owned by Andy Waldman, who is like a family member to me. And yes, I'd love for you to do your podcast here. So he has totally taken me under his wing. He is just the most amazing human. He's always been, and so he has given me so much support. And so I'm always kind of allowed to go in there and film my podcast. And I started 5-6 years ago, and I've had the most incredible people that I've met from that podcast. And when I got to about 40 or 50 people in, I realized that there's similar things amongst them all. And these are people from different backgrounds and different races and different cultures and different countries and different everything. And I realized that there was these similarities. There was about 15 or 20 things that each of them did or experienced or felt or thought or incorporated into their life that were similar. I was like, wow, this is amazing. So I'm gonna apply what I know I can apply to my life. And I started to implement the different things into my life. It was because it's a gradual process, right? You start implementing, and about 3 to 6 months later, A&E calls me out of the blue saying, we want to bring your show back. And they also greenlit a show that is called Smart Home Nation that I created, and I was one of the executive producer on it. So then that show ended up coming back. So here I am back on, traveling the world and doing my thing. But I'm like, okay. And A&E has always been so good to me. Wonderful people work there. So there I am back on the road. So my life completely changed around. Now, I can't tell you how. I mean, I can tell you how. I can tell you basically what I did. Mm-hmm. Was it all those things I implemented? I'm thinking it was. There's got to be something to this universal law. There has to be something to spirituality. This is what I'm thinking, right? There's more to life than just what we see and know as humans.
Yeah.
And
that's part of the fun of it, is trying to figure out, okay, was that on purpose? How does that affect me? Yeah. I talk to a lot of people about that, and some of them are really certain about the part it plays in their lives. And some say, I don't know how all these things came together, but they did, and they can pinpoint or maybe go back to where all of it started, but they just can't explain how it happened.
Right.
Was that the point where you talked to around 50 people about their experiences? And I would imagine a lot of them got to their rock bottom in completely different ways, but you said that you started seeing a pattern in how they got themselves out. What things did you start to notice first about the stories and what they had in common?
It's interesting. That is what my book is about. I'm writing about all of that in my book. But I will, I'll tell you a few things. For example, and some of the stuff we've all heard before, but the way it was explained and the way I've processed this in my mind and in my heart is, I think, different. Here's a concept for you that I realized that some of them had said to me. We're always being told, to be present, be in the present moment, be present, right? But when you think about it, first of all, the word present it's a gift, right? So present is the same word as gift.
Right.
So the present is really a gift that we're given every moment of every second of every day, because it's the only thing that's real. It's the only thing that exists is the present. So a lot of times we live in the future, right? We're like, oh my God, so what happens if this happens or that happens? And I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And all of a sudden, if that happens, I'm going to be homeless in 3 months, right? We all do that. We think we're living over there half of the time.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's because of good things. Sometimes we so desperately want to get there. If it's for a good thing, we want to get to that goal. We want to just get there, right? But it brings on so much anxiety. You're constantly living in anxiety.
Yeah.
Right. And then if you're living in the past, which I did for 5 years, you're living with a lot of regret and shame, and it just brings on a lot of pain. And you can't get to the future if you can't let go. You can't even get to the present if you don't let go of the past.
That's true.
It's very difficult.
It's like a big weight that you have to just let go of, right?
And it's really hard. It's really hard. But if you really give yourself that gift of being in the present and be just there with whoever you're with and there with whoever's, you're really taking in the moment, that alone can change your life. Like even emotionally and physically too. Because when you're relieving some of that stress, because the truth is most of the things that we're so afraid that are going to happen in the future don't happen.
They don't.
Right?
And a lot of the ways we saw the past maybe weren't accurate either. If we really think about it, maybe we had our version of it, and then someone comes along and says, no, that's not really how it happened at all. But maybe we convinced ourselves it was a certain way.
How it happened.
That's how it happened for me. But yeah. And also with the past, guessing with everything you've done and everything you've experienced, thinking about that past and feeling like you'd lost it or you threw it away. I can see where you're like, oh, what did I do the right thing? What I had it so good. How did I get here? And it sounded like you stayed in that place for a little while until you started maybe talking to other people who had that experience. Did you find some comfort at first in sort of commiserating with people who had been where you've been?
Yes and no, because it's interesting. Like when you're in your rock bottom, it's really hard to talk to successful people that are happy. It's so hard. And so everybody that was on my podcast had hit rock bottom, but they all got out of it and they were in a very good place in their life.
They're on the other side. Okay.
And I'm just being completely honest. Yeah. And so every day I'm still in my rock bottom. I can barely pay my rent. And people don't know that. This was very public too, but they don't know how bad it was. When you're on TV forever, people think that all these actresses and everything, they just continue to make lots of money. Not like that. The money has completely changed in this business, first of all. But also, it's, if you're not getting big residual checks and you're not like a movie star or a big, huge TV star, it doesn't happen like the way that some people think, you know? And you're as good as your last show that you recorded. It's a job and there are no residuals. So I was sitting there going, okay, well, I'm glad that you're a multi-gazillionaire now and I can't even pay my rent. All right, that's a good story. Like at first I was really sarcastic about it. I hated it. Like it was like pulling teeth just for me to do another episode because I'm like, this is not making me feel better. And then finally I thought, okay, the answers are here. The voice was coming back. The answers are in. Okay, well, what? And then I started to really think about it. And I thought, okay, all right, I can see the pattern. They all said that when you're in your rock bottom too, one of the keys is to just be still. Don't make any huge decisions. Just be with it and give yourself a break and just be with it. Just sit in it. And yeah, you're there. Let things shift in their own way, which sounds strange, but the problem is that we're in rock bottom. We're like, okay, I gotta get out. I gotta do this. I have to do this. I gotta do that. Oh my God. And it's so stressful. You live in anxiety. You wake up in the middle of the night, your heart's pounding. You can't get past it. You know, you have panic attacks constantly. But if you're just still, and I'm saying even just for a couple of weeks, and I know we all have to pay our bills and I get it. I understand that, but you have to take the time to shift the energy. So just sitting there and stopping was one of the things that a lot of them did. And I got so, broken into it that yes, I ended up having to do the same thing. And there are shifts that happen. I do believe that there's a very spiritual side to life, but you have to allow it in. You have to see it and feel it and be there and be present with it. So there's so many things that was very interesting. And one is be in nature. We've all heard of that, but really be in nature and look at the trees and thank the trees and thank the ground that you're walking on and walk with your bare feet in the sand and in the dirt and in the mud. Plant trees, plant things, like really get and really connect with nature, because it's proven scientifically too that it changes the whole energy in the body too when you're in nature.
Yeah.
Well, that was another thing I did. I went on walks every single day. I started meditating. Like I can go on and on. There's so many things about a mindset shift, a spiritual shift, everything that you fill your mind with, everything that you see, that you hear, that you eat is super important when you're in your rock bottom to get out. Don't watch the news. Don't fill your head with stuff that just brings that. You feel it inside. Like when you're watching something beautiful and then when you're watching something awful, you feel it inside. Just connect with yourself and feel what you feel when you see those things or hear these things, right? So you have to get all of that out of your life, in your home. Only surround yourself with things that don't have a bad memory attached. Don't save the bed that you had from your divorce. Get rid of it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's so many things. So that is what my book is about. And I keep thinking I have the title for it, but I don't. And Maggie's helping me. And and so now I do a lot of public speaking and keynote speaking. And I'm doing, I'm shifting into helping people become confident on camera and finding their authenticity through it.
That's huge, because a lot of people have a message, they have a story, and they have this lack of confidence, or they have this lack of ability, because sometimes it's a skill, sometimes it is a talent. And if it's talent, go you. I mean, God bless you, or whatever people say.
Yeah.
But if it's a skill that you need to acquire, then they come to someone like you who's been doing it for a very long time. And to where it is just second nature for you. And then I would imagine, we'll go off track for just a second here, just like 3 seconds. But I would imagine when you are going through that, when you created your course, did you have to step back? Because I've been a photographer for 30 years. And when I teach someone how to start taking pictures or how to put yourself in the frame of mind to see things in a certain way, I have to remember all the things I've forgotten because I just do them automatically.
Yes.
Was that the case for you?
Totally.
Yeah.
Like the most basic things. Because now you have to put on a teacher hat.
Right.
I'm not TV host. on all these different shows, TV star, whatever. I'm not doing that now. I'm the teacher and I'm the mentor and I'm the guide and I love it. But the thing is, yeah, I'm so happy now doing this. So doing that, you have to teach the basics. It's what I think is so second nature is a gift for somebody who has never been on TV. What you said right there was a huge learning curve for me.
It's kind of fun because it forces you to re-explore the thing that you love to do.
Yeah.
You have to start looking at it in a different way, a much more simple way, a way that takes it a few notches down, because you can't just say, well, you just do the thing. Well, I could talk to another photographer who's been doing it as long as me. We can talk in a whole different language than what I would have to teach someone.
Oh, yeah.
And I had that experience years and years ago. I was teaching second year students. I was teaching them about studio lighting, and I would tell them all the things about the lighting, how to set up the lighting. But I just didn't realize that I had to tell them to set up their tripods a certain way. Otherwise, the camera would shake all over the place. And they came out with this, it was film back then. And they came out with all this really blurry film. And I was like, so what did you do now? The lighting was perfect, exactly like I told them. The pictures were awfully blurry. But anyway, I just wanted to run down that rabbit trail for a second. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. And you learn through trial and error like you did.
Oh, for sure.
I am too.
You'll get some questions from students and you'll say, oh yeah, you know what? I should put that in there as a note because that is something you might run into.
I have my voice notes on my phone and I'm just like, I got to add that. I got to add that. And because it's all the easy basic stuff that I don't realize. It's definitely a learning curve. And yeah, it's been very interesting.
They know you know it because they see you do it so effortlessly and naturally. And then when you have to break it down to explain, it's okay, I can do this. It's going to take some effort to, how did I do that? How do I, then you start questioning yourself. But the proof is all out there in everything you've done. So that's really cool that you're doing that. And I'm sure you're getting a ton out of it, just more appreciation for what you've been doing all these years and the joy of seeing someone else take off and either tell their own stories or help people in their own way.
I love being a TV host too. I love hosting. I have another show right now called Passion to Profit that's in pre-production, but that's going to be a slow, takeoff. We're taking it slow. And I'm also just at a different place in my life where, I'm fine either way. It's different for me now. It's interesting. I was off and running, back to the story just to kind of tie up the ends with what happened. So I have the two shows back. I'm executive producer of one. I'm like back to the whole Hollywood scene and my life is going. I'm making money again. Life is great, whatever.
You can go to parties now.
Yeah, I can go to parties now and have something to say, right? I had learned a lot. So I had become a different person.
Oh, yeah.
This was like 7 years later, and I had been through a lot. So now I'm a different person. And also the business has changed. Mm-hmm. And so here I am. I was gone for 4 months at a time and 3 months at a time, huge, like chapters of time. And I get back and I have a family. I have a 12-year-old. She was 10 at the time. And I'm in a relationship and we have, this beautiful home in the Palisades. And I have my life and I love my life. And so here I am all on the road again. And I remember coming back and I hadn't seen my daughter in 4 or 5 months, which is just awful. But she was like, Mom, I'm your biggest fan. And because I said to her, I only want to do this if you give me the okay. Like you have to be okay with it or I'm not going to do this. She's like, no, I want you to go. So then when I was reunited with her, we were in a parking garage. She ran from one side to the other. And I was, ran and we were just like the tears coming. And she goes, you're so good. And I saw you on TV and I'm so proud of you. You're like the best mom ever. But I could see this thing in her eyes, right? What she was saying, I didn't feel like that was what she was feeling. Oh. So I said to her, Ava, Mommy never travels again for work for more than 5 days or a week at a time. I said, how would you like that? She just bawled and broke down and she's got the biggest eyes ever. And I said, okay, I'm going to make a decision. I'm going to put hosting on the back burner and I'm going to shift.
It sounds like she was being really strong for you.
She was being like my everything, but I didn't really realize how hard that was for her because I was just off, trying to get myself out of the situation I was in. And so a lot of times we don't realize the effect it has on the kids, even though they're supportive.
Right.
That was a massive pivot for me, massive shift. And then I ended up finding out the shows didn't end up going on anyways, but it was fine. So it just all worked out great. And so I'm like, okay, I have to pivot, and what do I want to do? And then I had the coach. So I had a business coach, and so I'm not sure what to do, but I was excited about the fact that I could do something now. And I was like, I had let go of the past from all the work I had done, because I did a massive deep dive into self-healing and for about 5 years. And so I had let go of the past. I was excited about my future. I'm like, okay, I get to stay home. I get to be with my child. I get to create my home, and I get to have this. And that is really what was more important to me. And then, I worked with coaches, and I ended up getting my own coaching certification, and it's life coaching. And so within that, I learned how to guide people. And I learned through all these different things that I really worked hard to do to figure out what the next chapter was going to be. And it just kept screaming in my face: public speaking, write your book, and teach people confidence on camera. It all came down to that. And so then there I was. I got a call from Miss USA. I got a call from Crystal Stewart, who used to own the Miss USA pageant, and she has a company called Miss Academy. And she said, would you create a course for the pageant girls about Hollywood and being a TV host and confidence on camera? And I said, sure. So I went to work. It took me months to create it.
Yeah.
And now that has branched off into, I have a course now, 12 weeks for real estate agents, and it's all about branding and authenticity and everything like that. And then it branched out. I have another one for entrepreneurs, and that's the 12-week course, but all of them are geared towards, that one's for entrepreneurs, and this one is for real estate agents. And it's just turned into this whole thing. And I do workshops now, and the company's growing, and I'm being asked every day to, speak on more stages, and I have to go to Philadelphia, and I might be going to Florida. And so it's baby steps. I started this journey 2 years ago.
Okay. Yeah.
And now it's starting to kind of.
Yeah, it's really picking up steam. That's so nice. And then at what point in that journey, so you had started the podcast, work has picked up, things were going pretty well, you were interviewing people about their rock bottom story. It sounds like these were all people who had come through it themselves. No one wants to talk about it when they're in it, right? So how did you find these folks? Were they just friends of friends, or were they other books you had read from people who had been through a journey and you said, you know what, that sounds interesting, I want to talk to that person? Some of the wisdom is you need to write the book that you most need to read. And I'm guessing right now, since you've been through your own rock bottom story, you know how things are going right now. You've talked to a lot of people. You all have, it sounds like, a lot of things in common. I would imagine you've got a couple of people or types of people who you have in mind every time you sit down to the keyboard and start writing these stories and what they have in common. Someone who needs to read this book. So that is a couple of questions. I'll back up.
Yeah, that's okay.
Let's first talk about, how did you find all the folks who you interviewed?
So it's any and all of what you said. Like, there is no shortage of people that hit rock bottom. I will tell you that, which I learned. I had people reaching out daily. Can I be on your podcast?
Okay.
It was crazy. I still get people reaching out a lot, but now now I know what the audience wants. And so I'm kind of doing it more in themes now. Like today I'm interviewing a rock star, real estate agent. And it's very interesting. Most successful people have a rock bottom story. No one's had it on easy street. Everybody has had some kind of struggle or some kind of. Now, I'm not saying everyone has, because there really are people out there that haven't really struggled much in life. I mean, right. I do believe that. I don't think that there's many, but there are people that just haven't had to.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is no shortage. And now what I do is I kind of reach out to people on Instagram and I send them a DM and I ask them, because I deep dive into their stuff. And then I'm like, okay, this person is perfect. So like Coot Blackson, who's amazing. I'm a huge fan of him. He's on Instagram, amazingly inspirational person. I reached out to him and he, responded back, yes, I'd love to do your podcast. And I was just thrilled that he'd want to do it. And then I didn't even know he had a story of rock bottom. And of course he did. Or there was struggle, or there was identity, you don't really know who you are. And then until you find out. And there's never, ever a lack of finding somebody for the podcast. And then sometimes I just love having just everyday people on there because their stories are even crazier.
Right. I can imagine.
Yeah.
What was it that switched inside you from the time you started doing these interviews? It sounds like you were a little resentful of, great, this isn't happening for me, this thing they're talking about where everything turned around. And you said you heard the voice and it said, just keep going. But was there anything else that you realized, I just need to pay attention and keep rolling with this?
Yeah, I mean, there comes a point when what you're doing isn't working. It's just, you're still in your rock bottom. It's not working. Probably another year had gone by and I'm like, okay, I'm not getting any answers. So blah, blah, blah. The more frustrated you are, the more you're not in tune with shifting the energy and shifting your mindset. And so it was when I started putting the pieces of the puzzle together. I had to get to number 40, 50, or 60 in order to even see the map. So now I have a map that I teach to get out of this.
All right.
Map your way out,
Yeah.
right? And I did implement those steps. Now it's gradual. And at first you're not going to see anything, but you got to keep going. You have to believe in what doesn't exist. That was a big thing, whether it's God or whether it's the universe or whether it's whatever that is for you inside. There, you know, everyone has a different way of believing. If you believe in the unknown and the unseen, in whatever that is for you. And it's a beautiful thing that we all have a different way of doing it, but it all feels the same. It's still belief in what's not right there. It's just staying on the path and keeping going and saying, no, I know this, you know, and really focusing. When you do focus on the future, only see yourself in positivity, only see yourself being successful, only see yourself. And I would envision myself on that stage every day. Well, it was the stage, but it was also, I envisioned myself back on TV because that is what I wanted more than anything. I wanted my shows back. And they came back in a miraculous way. A&E calls me out of the blue. Yeah, we want to bring your show back after 7 years of it not being on air. That's kind of weird.
Yeah. That's a little coincidental, right?
Yeah, kind of weird.
After thinking about it every day. That's pretty cool.
I've been meditating on it, thinking about it. I go on nature walks, envisioning myself. You just have to just drown yourself in, and it's hard when you're in your rock bottom to do that. It's hard. But the more you put yourself and you change your environment and you surround yourself with positive people, I'm giving away a lot of my little secrets here, but one of them is you literally have to get rid of anybody in your life that doesn't make you feel good about yourself. It's just done, at least until you get out.
Right. Okay.
You know what I mean? You have to be selfish. You have to put yourself first. The people that don't return your texts, the people that are sarcastic, right? The people that like always have to dig.
Yeah.
You cannot have those people in your life when you're in rock bottom. You can't. You have to be selfish and you have to make decisions. And sometimes it's family and sometimes it's friends. And you can only really surround yourself with positive people, positive situations. Networking is a huge thing. Get out there and meet new people. You know, networking is what ultimately got me out of this too. I met new people. I met a man that is like so good to me and so amazing to me. And he literally picked me up out of the little mess I was in. He's, I'm going to put you right here because I believe in you. I'm going to give you some water and some fertilizer. There you go. You're going to grow again. And that's what he did for me. And that's because I met him through expanding my network of people. So that's a whole other chapter that I talk about. It is so important.
It sounds like you took your pain, some of that isolation, all of those things that you felt when you were in that period of your life, and you're using that as fuel to help other people. So when you do sit down to the keyboard and you're writing out some of these stories and what these stories of the people you've interviewed and what you had in common with them and your journey, who are you thinking of as the person reading that book? Maybe they're on a plane headed somewhere and they're not headed anywhere they want to go necessarily. And they're doing the same thing. I have a saying that I like. I did not make it up, but I'm sure you've heard it a million times. Nothing changes if nothing changes. So let's say if your book was the thing that someone got a hold of that sparked that change, what type of person would that be?
In the intro to my book, I talk about how I want this book to help anyone who's either been through struggle or is struggling, especially the people that are struggling. And there's a lot. Life isn't easy in general. It's just, I don't think it's easy. It ebbs and flows. And the book is really for anyone who wants inspiration or anyone who's going through a really hard time and needs a map to start to get out of it. Honestly, even if my book helps one person, then at least I changed one life. That's great for me. It's for that person that needs inspiration or who's going through a hard time in life, yeah, and doesn't have any answers. Because I know that there's so few people that will help you. Like you feel very alone when you're in rock bottom, very alone. So I want that person to pick up my book and just open up your mind and just read it. Just try it on.
Yeah, and it's like you said, if someone is truly at rock bottom, they will try anything. I had an experience in my life very Similar. I would say it was probably rock bottom. I had just a period of time, gosh, probably 12 years ago, something like that, where just all of my family was dying off for whatever reasons. Just
Wow.
everyone was not only grandparents, which is not a huge surprise, right? But that was the domino that started a lot of other things. And I remember I was chewing through books on happiness. I wasn't happy anymore. My career was at a point where I was a little bored with it. It was still going well. I was still producing good work, but I was like, man, is this what I'm going to do forever? So I hit a little bit of stagnation in career. I hit stagnation in with the well, it was more drama with the family. And I just hit a point where I know I'm not happy. I need to read everything I can about happiness until I realized that I can read every book about happiness and still never be happy until I start doing something about it. So I love the fact that you say you have created a roadmap for people to take action, because reading the book isn't necessarily the action that's going to do anything for you. It's the action you take that's different from the action you took yesterday, whether that is
Yes.
sitting on the couch, whether that's a Netflix binge, whatever that thing you did yesterday, do something different today. And
Get out of bed, first of all. That's step number one. That's hard. That's
getting
hard.
out of bed,
Yeah, it's
would be a
hard.
good first step. Yeah.
It's a good first step, but that step can be very difficult. I was in bed for a long time.
Wow.
But I think what you were struggling with is you lost your purpose.
Yes, very much so. In identity in some way, because sometimes you have your identity. And yeah, I had a marriage was crumbling at that time too, just because of all the stress. There was no other drama outside. We were both being exposed to a lot of both career and, oh, by the way, we owned our own business. So that was around the time the economy was going to hell in a handbasket. And so everyone was nervous anyway. And
Like right now?
yeah, well, I don't watch the news anymore. I don't know what's going on until it's really bad.
Yeah.
I think part of it was purpose. I think part of it was, like you said, identity. When you felt like you couldn't go to a party and say, yes, I do this, or this is how I spend my time right now. And when you don't have that to say, you start questioning, well, okay, am I okay? Am I like, what am I? What is real? Was that thing I used to do real? Is that who I was? And now I'm not that anymore. Oh,
Yes. Is that me? Is that not me? Who am I? And that's removed.
then you have to figure it out. And like you said, it's a process, but you've got a roadmap and you're working on the book. Do you have any idea on a drop date for it?
I am trying so hard to get it finished by the end of this year.
Okay.
But what happens is life always pivots, right? And so now my whole courses, it's called Mastering the Spotlight. It's kind of blossoming. And then same with the public speaking. But that all takes work. Like my course, I have put my heart and soul into this. I'm meeting I meet my students and I'm like, okay, no, they need more of this. So like I'm changing it as we go along so that I give them everything that they need. And so I overgive. So there's constant work and energy going towards getting through the 12 weeks for me. And I'm going to have 2 of those going on. And then the speaking. So I'm thinking all of that brings me up until August. This is the real plan that I'm hoping I could stick to. I got to stick to this. And then I'll be finished the 2, maybe 3 12-week programs, because I may launch one more. And then I want to start on the book. So I'm thinking from August until December, I really want to finish the book. I need to give that book a good 3 months to finish it, like just really putting my energy into that book. But that means I'm not doing my 12-week course. I may have to give that a break because it's so much work.
Right.
That's okay.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and that's the tough part about prioritizing, because either way, you're helping a lot of people.
That is my purpose. I want to inspire people. I want people to know that they're worth it, that they matter.
With both sides of you're helping like the agents be more successful in communication, which is huge in their business. I mean, that's just foundational. And the ones who don't do it well don't stay in it long. And that's going to be really good skill boost for any of the folks who take that course. But then also the people who do want to speak, they've got a story inside of them. They want to do what you're doing and help more people in their own way. They might not have a story like you, but everyone has a little different story that resonates with a lot of other people. And those people are never going to feel comforted or never going to feel like maybe someone else understands what they've gone through unless that person gets up and says the words out of their mouth. And maybe the confidence that you help them attain is going to be what gets them there.
I do a lot of coaching. So I only have about 20, if that many come on board, because I really do a lot of personal coaching on Zoom. And so it's a lot of my coaching with them, which is what they need the most. But yeah, like I teach them all kinds of skills, and I do teach them how to edit on their phone, teleprompter skills, interview skills for when they interview people that are either walking through the house, potential buyers, sellers, clients. I even have them go out into the neighborhood and interview restaurant owners, and let's take in what is so great about this industry and go out and interview a restaurant owner, interview a textiles owner, interview like whatever it is, really bring in the surrounding area. So I have them doing all kinds of stuff. And then we talk about it on Zoom, and it's very me interacting. This is not an online course. This isn't like I put it up and then you have to go and do it on your own. There's homework, and then we discuss it, we go through it, and then I do lots of coaching. So by the time they're done, I created this thing called the 30 Days to Confidence on Camera Challenge. And so they get a video from me every single morning that is just a crazy, funny, odd, weird video. And I'm like, okay. And I'm on set and I'm acting things out, and I give them a challenge every day, and they have to be on camera for 3 minutes. So it makes them like being on camera for 3 minutes is uncomfortable. And that's it's a long time. And you're not allowed to edit. You can't shut it off. Once the camera goes on, you just put it on.
Oh, nightmare.
But by the time they're done, it's amazing, the transformation, because the only way you're going to be great on camera and be confident on camera is practicing. I got to where I am because I have been on thousands of hours of TV. Thousands. That was like out during the beta and VHS time, which isn't even on the internet. You can't even find a lot of the stuff I've done. I have it in boxes in my garage, and about 50 boxes filled with beta tapes. It's nuts. But it is through practice. And you also have to get to a breaking point where you break and you're like, yeah, I don't even care. I'm just going to wake up in the morning and do the 3-minute video because she's driving me crazy at this time.
Right.
So that's the point I want them to get to. And by the end, I'm telling you, it is magic that happens. It's magic. And they're like, oh my God, I'm so great now. Like, I feel so good. I can just do anything now with it. And you don't post it on the internet. You post it in a private Facebook page. So everyone that's doing it is doing it together.
Okay.
So it's only for the people that are doing it that see it.
Yeah.
It's practice. And, okay. Like, I'm okay with 5 or 6 people and we're all doing it together. So I'll post it. But if you want, you can post it on your social media, but you don't have to.
Yeah.
So they do that, plus the course, plus the weekly Zooms. And by the end of it, it's pretty cool, the transformation.
That's great. So if someone's listening to this and say, everything she just said applies to me. I need more confidence on camera. I need to do these Instagram reels way better. I'm terrible at those. What's the best way for someone to get in touch with you?
Just go to my website. Just go to tanyamemme.com. And there's enroll now. There's this. You could reach out to me by email. You can reach out to you, DM me on Instagram. There's plenty of ways that you can reach out to me. And just let me know, and I'll get on the phone with you or on a Zoom call, and we'll figure it out, and we'll talk and see if, the program is right for you. Because I definitely only want people in there that really can use this information and that are the right fit for it. And we'll see if it's a fit. And I also do one-on-ones. I have people come to the studio in Brentwood. Mm-hmm. So I also interview companies. So if you're an entrepreneur and you have a company or business, whatever, it's a beautiful set. You come down, I spend 1 to 2 hours with you, and I have your logo on the set, and then your set colors. We design the set, all this stuff. And then you have a 45-minute, super professional, beautifully shot interview for your website. And then I send you home with about 10 to 15 social media clips.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
So that's another thing that I offer too. So yeah, if you're interested in that, just DM me on that. Eventually, I'm going to have all of that listed on my website. I have to still do that. It's been a big year. I'm trying to keep up with everything.
It's been a wild couple of years for you, it sounds like. Yeah. And I'll have all of that listed in the show notes. And I want to thank you for all the work you're doing, because you're really inspiring people based on some not so inspiring events that happened to you. And I have one final question, and I'm curious, everything you went through in those 5 years, would you change anything? Because they made you who you are now. So as bad as it was, what would you change about it?
That is such a hard question, because I do answer in truth. Like when people ask me questions, it's like when people say, oh, money doesn't buy you happiness. Yes, it does. Okay.
Yeah. It might be brief happiness. It might be just very passing with the breeze kind of happiness, but yes.
I'm not talking about millions of dollars. I certainly don't need to have millions of dollars. I'm just saying to pay my bills and pay my rent, because I know what it's like. Yeah, it's going to make me happier.
Right.
Anyway. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's weird. I ebb and flow on that. There's sometimes when I feel like I wouldn't change it. And then there's sometimes where I just realize I didn't have the tools to get out of it, to get out of my rock bottom. And life is a journey. I'm still on that journey and I'm still taking it all in. And you don't forget such a tremendous, because it was like a good 10 years of trying to dig myself out. And now it's just starting to make sense. So ask me that question in a couple more years and I'll probably have a more solid answer for you. I'm just being honest. It's so life-changing and so traumatic. And I put a good 5-6 years into personal growth, working through the trauma that I went through too, because it was so public and there was a lot of sexual harassment, verbal abuse along the way being in this business. And I went through a lot of stuff I don't talk about that I went through. And I had to really work on all of that. We all have experienced trauma in our own lives, right?
Yes.
And it's working through it. Yeah, we're humans. These things happen.
Working through it. Well, Tanya, thank you so much for joining us on A Joyful Rebellion today. This podcast, I know we talked a little bit about it, but it's all about that point in life when you've sort of done the program. As an adult, you did the things everyone said was going to get you where you wanted to be. Then you look around and you say, yeah, I feel success, but I don't feel successful. I don't feel happy. I don't feel fulfilled. And I've experienced that. That's nowhere near rock bottom. That is a sense of, things might need to change if I'm going to live my authentic life, if I'm going to live with my purpose. Rock bottom is very different. So I do appreciate you talking us through that experience for you, talking about the interviews that you've done with people who have had that experience and just pulling the curtain back on a little bit of your life and being really vulnerable. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I loved it. It was great. You asked really good questions.
Thank you. I will look forward to getting this episode out and I'll keep in touch. And as soon as that book drops, everyone who listens to this podcast will know all about it.
Awesome. It's a very inspirational book. I hope you read it. And you don't have to be in your rock bottom. You can just be where you were at too.
Sure.
For anyone who wants a little inspiration, needs some direction. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Take care. Thanks so much for joining me today. And if you have an extra minute, I have a favor to ask. Some of you listen to this show on Apple Podcasts, and a lot of you I talk to are on Spotify or Amazon. I'd love it if you would take just a second to leave a rating or a review. It lets the platforms know that listeners are getting value from the show and suggest it to others who are interested in similar content. And as always, if you have a topic you'd like me to cover, a guest suggestion, or just general feedback, I'd love to hear about that too. Connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, or at ajoyfulrebellion.com.